John, Anik, and Kenny Florian Podcast. John, Anik, and Kenny Florian.
I f***ing love them. I can't get enough of them.
Let's hear that Boston next.
Big jab there from Duffy, and Frank Mir is hurt now. Down goes Duffy, out cold. Frank Mir does it again. Rock'em sock'em robots here. Oh my goodness.
Hyperbole.
They're a couple of absolutely self-involved bullshit artists.
Here are your hosts, John, Anik, and Kenny Florian.
Headshot. Bang.
Oh, great to be back with you. 1 year anniversary of Headshot Bang. Sunday, August 20th, 2023 is the year. Episode 431 of the Anik and Florian Podcast. I was up all night. Food delivery driver delivered our late night food a far ways from the hotel. So thanks to my twin bro for braving it for the masses. I'm so glad Ken Flo's here today because I am going on fumes. Thanks for pardoning the voice. Ian Gary said, I went to Brazil to listen. I am here today to listen to Ken Flo's brilliance on UFC 292 because my head is still spinning. What a live event. What a week in the hub of the universe, Boston, Massachusetts. Anything I say to the positive about the Boston crowd is probably going to be viewed through a lens of a lack of objectivity. But I don't even know what's going on half the time because I'm in the cans and listening to traffic. That crowd was so loud. Shout out to the New Englanders, the Bostonians, the Philadelphians, even the New Yorkers, everybody who made their way to TD Garden. Only thing we were really missing was, three-time world title challenger Kenny Florian.
Oh, man, I was jealous that I was not able to be there, man. The energy, the vibe just seemed like it was insane in there. And, man, did they get a tremendous card. So real happy for everyone involved. Yeah, John, you're an animal, dude. I see this kid. He sends me an email like 4:50 in the morning. Like, hey, guys, this is what we're going to do tomorrow. Yeah. I'm like, what the hell is this guy doing awake? You're an animal, dude.
Well, I usually try to get you guys the odds for the main event challenge on Wednesday or Thursday, but it was a busy week in Massachusetts. We don't have that many Massachusetts athletes on the card these days, so I did some media on Thursday. The whole week was a whirlwind, but I'm super grateful for it. And to take a Q&A stage with Rob Font and Calvin Cater and Joe Lozon and Chael Sonnen and address a Boston crowd and a Patrice Bergeron t-shirt, Ken Flo. I mean, it certainly is not a Sean Thornton t-shirt in Vancouver during the Stanley Cup final fighting Diego Nunes and then going out and beating him in a somewhat hostile territory. But it was pretty cool. And what was interesting is that I got to sort of write intros that for the Boston athletes. So Font, Cater, Lozon, the one that I introduced as arguably the best pound-for-pound fighter out of the state of Massachusetts. Of those three, which of those three do you think I introduced as such?
Let's see.
And let me just say, 6 of Calvin Cater's 12 UFC fights have been main events, right? Rob Font obviously has fought Jose Aldo and recently Corey Sandhagen, a lot of high-level guys, tons of main events for Font as well. So for me, it was between those two guys with respect to Joe Lozon, the bonus machine, and the absolute legendary 28-time UFC veteran Ken Flo victim. But I just thought I'd have a little fun with it. So I was like, and arguably the best pound-for-pound fighter out of the state of Massachusetts. You think I went Rob Font or Calvin Cater?
Cater.
I went Rob Font.
There you go.
I went Rob Font. And now Cater probably hates me because it's Max Holloway fight week, and we brought back the artwork there behind us, immortalizing what I believe is the greatest singular performance, certainly statistically in UFC history. When we get to Zhang Weili and her nearly 300 significant strikes landed, do you remember how many significant strikes landed Holloway had against Calvin Cater?
It's
you
like
probably
700 or some shit.
He threw the volume is insane. I was shaking deep into the night. I went to interview him. I did this quick hit segment for Facebook. We were on Fight Island. And Max was like, you're shaking. I'm like, yeah, dude. Like, I've never seen anything like that. You're looking at us, telling us you're the best boxer in the UFC and landing. He landed 445 significant strikes. Gee. It'll never be duplicated. But a lot to get to today, including predictions on Max Holloway and the Korean zombie Chan Sung Jung. But thanks to everybody at TD Garden for a memorable weekend. And it was made more memorable, of course, by Sugar Sean O'Malley. I got a lot of merchandise for a lot of different fighters. Don't read too much into the Sugar Daddy t-shirt today. Longo coming up, by the way, in about 28 minutes. Perhaps he'll read too much into the t-shirt. Ken Flo, there is a new UFC bantamweight champion. It's Sugar Sean O'Malley. Doubt him at your own peril. Sometimes I wonder aloud why these guys that look to me like special strikers don't seem to get the respect from either the fan base or their fellow fighters. Got to respect him now. Sean O'Malley's the new king, Ken Flo.
No question about it, John. I think that we often doubt them, myself included, because grappling is such a key component to the game. And it's rare that you have someone that can negate much of that with footwork and long-range weapons alone. And O'Malley was largely able to do that. Now, of course, he was in some clinch situations, even he was in some single leg situations where he was able to get himself out of trouble up against the cage. So he certainly did his homework there and should be applauded for that. But I think what is more difficult is the ability to do it, or to stop takedowns, to stop clinches with long-range weapons and footwork alone. The lateral footwork, the jabs, the feints, all the little things that people do not like doing in the gym, all the things that takes years and years to cultivate, are the things that Sean O'Malley brought into that octagon on Saturday night. And Aljo looked frustrated. He looked confused. And that's what got him to get a little bit too greedy, a little bit too anxious, and he threw himself out of position. Now, against 90% of the people in the UFC, and probably even higher percentage of that in the bantamweight division, which is absolutely ridiculous, by the way, it would have worked. It would have been just fine. But when you have a guy who knows how to counter, who knows how to move just out of reach and land an absolute laser wherever he wants, whenever he wants to, it spells trouble. And I was just mesmerized by that replay. I've probably seen it 1,000 times, John. And, the way I saw it is, if it was going to go down, if O'Malley was going to win, it was going to be that shot. He's just so brilliant at throwing it. He was working it before the fight. He's thrown it a ton of times in other fights. And it was Aljo's forward movement, right, that crushed into that right hand of Sean O'Malley. And, man, just a brilliant shot. And I have much more, but I'm going to take a pause.
So Sean O'Malley's a special athlete, and I'd imagine that's part of the quotient as well. When you talk about the feints and the sophistication of his striking game, there is a new wave of talent as far as the striking is concerned. And I certainly hesitate to call Israel Adesanya new wave, because he's been striking forever. But if you're talking about the 10 most sophisticated layered strikers, or 10 best strikers in the UFC, when you combine assets and traits, I mean, I speak superlatively about Ian Gary and Sean O'Malley, and oftentimes I get far more sophisticated MMA minds than me, shucking me off. So how special an athlete were you? I mean, I understand the work ethic, and we'll get into his torn muscle and the rib cartilage and all of that, but how special an athlete are we dealing with, and how much of it is just that, this kid's like Patrick Mahomes with his little fucking fade back right hand?
Yeah, listen, I think that he's much more than that, right? Because it's all the things that lead to that fade back right hand. And I think that he had a partner in Aljo that did make some mistakes, of course, right? But again, that's something that has been working for him time and time again. But yeah, Sean O'Malley is a special athlete. I think when you talk about his speed, his timing, his rhythm, his movement, those are all things that are, very tough to cultivate, very tough to train. And then, of course, he was gifted with tremendous length, with reach, with height in the division where you just don't see that. And the fact that he's then able to utilize that and execute on that level is really what makes him special. So, and again, similar to Izzy, you get a guy who is very tall for the division, who knows how to utilize those long-range weapons at a very, very high level, and that spells disaster for the opposition. But in regards to Aljo, I've heard a lot of people say, well, he overextended himself. What the hell does that mean? It's like if he's throwing a strike, does that mean he's overextending himself? Well, to me, what it means is he's throwing himself out of position. He got his head a little bit too far over his hips. His hands were not up. And all of his whole body was pointed towards the weapons of Sean O'Malley, which is not a great thing, right? So when you have that momentum, when your head is past your hips at that point, it's very hard to retract. It was a car accident waiting to happen in that moment. And O'Malley is just way too damn good with his speed, with his timing, with his weapons for you to do that to him. So again, it was a perfect disaster. And it's another reminder that MMA is the sport where dreams get realized or they get crushed. And that's exactly what happened in that main event.
Ray Longo is one of my dearest friends, and I'm a little anxious for the Ray Longo minute today because the first thing Aljamain Sterling said on the microphone was that he underestimated Sean O'Malley. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, what? And then he said in the post-fight presser that his footwork and lateral movement, that of O'Malley, were two things that he was underprepared for, and that surprised him. And I understand the lack of time to prepare, and we could spend a quarter of an hour on the champion sort of being expedited to this date 15 weeks after 25 hard minutes with Henry Cejudo, the injuries that perhaps Aljamain Sterling had for the first few weeks of camp that he had to navigate. But, you know, I have heard that Aljamain Sterling, and Joe Rogan masterfully called him the best weight cutter in the sport. Kenny, there's no margin of error for Aljamain Sterling. He likes to have a drink or two, but when it comes to making 135 pounds, there's no error for this. There's no margin of error for this man. Had to make it twice in 15 weeks. A lot of different factors here, but I just don't quite understand what is it that he smokes weed, that he has facial tattoos? Like what is it going to take for people to, you know, give Sean O'Malley his flowers and understand just how critical time and space is when you fight him? John,
it's funny that you say that because it's something I've actually mentioned on it, and I do think it's a bit of a tactic. You're like, this guy, he's got clown hair. He's got, rolls around in this real flashy Lamborghini. Like, certainly this isn't the guy, this skinny, lanky guy. This isn't the guy that's going to beat me. I'm not taking him seriously. Well, you need to, because he's an absolute savage. And, that's kind of a facade. But when you look deeper, this is a highly, highly skilled fighter. Now, I was also taken aback when I heard Aljamain Sterling say that I underestimated him. There's nothing in what I see in O'Malley's game on the feet where you should underestimate him because, all of his fights, his high-level fights against Petr Yan or whatever, like, he is a striker that you cannot replicate. For me, Aljamain, I'd love to know who he was sparring with. First of all, who do you find that can fight like Sean O'Malley, and who did you bring in? Because if you're going in there and you're getting hard sparring against Merab or getting hard sparring against these other guys, that's great, hard sparring, but that is not Sean O'Malley. And you need to find someone that is as close to that man as you can, because to me, when Aljo walked out to that fight in round one, he looked completely confused. He didn't know what to do. He was trying to get a handle on him. And, reach, length, that's a real thing. And I feel like that hit him in the face before he was hit in the face, if you know what I mean. And, there's a fighter is responsible for their camp. Of course, coaches are responsible for that as well, and who you bring in and all those things. Managers, perhaps, right?
Yeah.
They definitely take. So I guess I wonder, as a team, as a unit, what kind of lesson learned this is going to be for the future, because, you do your homework, you watch your video, but then how well you prepare and who you bring in for that fight is so damn crucial. These aren't little regional fights. This is the UFC at the world championship level. So you can't mess about.
Julian Erosa was one of the guys in Las Vegas that I was seeing in Countdown trying to emulate Sean O'Malley. It all is what it is. And, we're going to have an interesting Ray Longo minute coming up here shortly. I do want to go to the other side when it comes to the preparation, because Tim Welch, as head coach, has devoted his professional life to Sugar Sean O'Malley, as has Augusto Tanquino Mendez, this close inner circle. Brandon Harris, the performance coach, with all of the breathing and the techniques and the mechanisms, right? I'm actually going to have a conversation with Brandon Harris on his podcast, I think, in the not too distant future. And I can't wait to talk to him about me optimizing my diaphragm and how poorly I use it when broadcasting, right? I believe you're supposed to fill your stomach with air when you're taking in a deep breath, and I don't always do that well, so much so that when I cap this Sean O'Malley fight, and man, I have learned to not compete with a Boston crowd, right? Like, someone fucking tell John Anik, right? Like, if somebody knocks someone out in Boston and the guy who delivers the knockouts. Last name is like O'Malley. Like, you got to give it like 6 seconds and then say, the Sugar Show on top of the world. Because, man, was I drowned out. But, dude, I was like seeing stars, almost blacked out because I don't use my diaphragm well and I don't take a breath in that entire sequence. But these coaches have revolved their life around preparing this man. Great sparring partners at the MMA lab with Mario Bautista and everybody else. So they are all in, and they have the pupil that has this work ethic cloaked in like bong hits, and people just can't be messing about, Gilbert Burns is one of the best fighters in the world. Bilal Muhammad is too, but it's like, for Gilbert to fight Bilal with no, it's like you can't really mess about at the elite levels when it comes to the preparation and the time. And that's why Dracus du Plessis is not going to Sydney in a few weeks.
Right. Absolutely, man. And I know Aljo did have a problem with the turnaround time right after his last fight against Cejudo, but still, I think there's more going on than just the time. I think the time was sufficient, but the preparation was probably lacking. And I've been there myself, man. Right before the BJ Penn fight, I had Mark Delagrati and Keith Florian as my main sparring partners in preparation for that fight, which is ridiculous. No offense to Keith and Mark Delagrati, but yeah. I need to be bringing way better guys, and right. I didn't have that, right? I mean, I brought in Hatsa Hioki and this, but again, we all make mistakes, so I'm not trying to make it look like, hey, I've never done that. These things happen, and these are hard lessons to take in MMA, man. It's a hard pill to swallow, but they are absolutely essential. And we also have to talk about Aljamain Sterling, and I don't want to skip too far ahead, John, but the fact that he was so real and so honest about how he was feeling after that fight. I mean, saying like, well, I mean, I clearly have to think about going to 145, think about what Volkanovski would do to me, things like that, and how he underestimated him. Like, those are things that you love to hear out of someone like Aljamain Sterling, and he was absolutely correct. I mean, you go back to what happened with him and Marlon Moraes to what he did after that, he was a completely different fighter. And to go back to what you were talking about with O'Malley and the breathing, it is also our breathing that guides us, that puts us in the right frame of mind so we can be as present as possible, so we can execute as well as possible. When I saw O'Malley out there, and Aljo typically always looks a little nervous and jumpy, but O'Malley, man, he just looked so composed, and he was just kind of taking everything in, like everything was happening in slow motion. He watched Aljo walk in. He was taking in the crowd. He was looking at his coaches. Just everything was on point. And that, to me, at least it signaled that he was going to be very difficult to beat. And so anyways, just kudos to O'Malley and his team, man. Just tremendous stuff.
He's a big game player. Was I better as a basketball player in practice or the games? I think you all could probably take a guess, right? Much better in practice, And I will be texting Keith Florian later today, Cody. Don't worry about that. What are we doing here in preparation for BJ Penn, guys? What are we doing with Mark Delagrati as the primary fucking sparring partner? So I don't necessarily want to see Aljo cut the weight anymore. Chael Sonnen and I were in unison in our belief that this was a missed opportunity, though, to not ask for an immediate rematch. And gosh, I mean, I have so many different things written down as far as the fight is concerned, the stoppage and everything else. Ray Longo, by the way, had to push back to 7:45. So our man, Big Gun Brian Petrie, shout out to you, but we might have to push you back a few minutes as well. So I don't want to see Aljamain Sterling cut down anymore, but these long reigning dominant champions get immediate rematches all the time, and he is certainly worthy of one. There are a couple of top contenders, Merab Dvalishvili, Corey Sandhagen, who are on the mend. Of course, there's the Chito Vera history. But to what extent do you think it was a missed opportunity for Aljamain Sterling? I mean, we all loved Aljo post-fight, right? I love the candor, the post-fight press conference. I just have so much respect for this man, and I could do 10 minutes on just the respect. But he cut himself down in advance of a potential move up to featherweight by saying, if this is what Sean O'Malley does to me, imagine what type of meat grinder Alexander Volkanovski would put me through. And then didn't call for an immediate rematch, which I think he deserved. So do you think it was a missed opportunity by Aljamain Sterling in the octagon after the fact?
I don't really, because in the grand scheme of things, right, you could say business-wise it could have been, right? No question about it. But I think that there's something to be said for a fighter being as authentic and honest as possible. And perhaps he wasn't all the way there to really think about that. But to me, he was, and he was being as real as possible. And I think that sometimes after a loss, what you don't want to be is that dude who's like, now give me another one, give me another chance, yada, yada, yada. And then the reality of it is, I think, right, and this is just my opinion watching from the outside in, is that the UFC probably wouldn't have given it to him anyway, just because he already talked about going up in weight. And that, again, I don't know what the relationship is between Aljo and the UFC, but to me, it doesn't seem like it's great. I think it's been contentious over the last couple years or so. And, you could argue that they were very happy that O'Malley is the champion, if we put it that way. And listen, from a stylistic standpoint and from a business standpoint, yeah, I totally get it. O'Malley is an absolute killer who knocks people out. Who do you want on your highlight reel? I get it, right? So I see that standpoint and can completely agree with that in that regard. But so I think that for him also, he probably would have wanted more time. And then for him to say, I want this rematch, but I'm not going to fight him in 6 months, 5 months, 7 months, 8 months. It would have been asking a lot from the UFC, and he already knows that probably would have been a tough ask.
Aljamain Sterling did win the first round on all three judges' scorecards, but he certainly didn't have the productivity, let's say, in this fight that Valentina Shevchenko did in her first meeting against Alexa Grasso. One thing Joe Rogan was saying was that sometimes when there's a decisive result like this, you don't necessarily have the foundation for an immediate rematch. For me, I think first and foremost, it's exciting to push the reset button. You do have your dear friend Merab Dvalishvili there as a number one contender. So I think it might just be time to move on to featherweight and see exactly what you can do there. There are a lot of big fights for him, potential main events for him there. So we'll see what happens. But as his friend, I just wouldn't want him to necessarily cut this much weight several more times hereafter. Gosh, so much to get into. As far as the stoppage is concerned, Ken Flo, no denying there's some inconsistency when it comes to these situations. I talk about these referees as having some of the harder jobs in MMA, judges too. I believe Jason Herzog and Mark Goddard are the two best referees in MMA right now. I'm probably forgetting an elite referee in there as well. Some might suggest that Goddard saved him some dignity by not actually having him go out cold with a few more ground strikes. No major protest from Aljamain Sterling. Huge protest from his right-hand man, Dvalishvili. I'm sure Dominic Cruz would want to see Aljo get another beat or two, and I tend to lean that way, Kenny, and thinking it was a skosh premature, even though I do like Goddard and give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, no question about it. Mark Goddard is fantastic referee, and he was actually had refereeing duties the night before in New York for us at the PFL. And, I think that I don't necessarily have a problem with it. If, again, I know nothing about refereeing. I probably would have let it go a little bit more because, yes, he was not all the way there, but Aljo was fighting his way back, right? To me, it looked like he was fighting his way back. When he turtled up at the very end, though, that's when I was like, eh. Right. So I don't know, man. I don't necessarily have a problem with it. It's clear Aljo was absolutely rocked. He was trying to battle his way back. Then it seemed like his legs and arms were kind of flailing, but not intelligently. He was just kind of, his body was doing it, but his mind not necessarily.
Sure. Yeah.
So, I wouldn't have had a problem with it going a little bit longer, but I'm sure it would have probably led to more damage. So in that regard, I think it's a pretty solid stoppage. But when you have a champion, you kind of want to give him a little bit more of a chance to get back into it. But it was a
tricky thing because Goddard and the officials, and rightfully so, certainly don't want to hear the noise like this is a championship setting. They're in there to protect the fighter. And I think a lot of fans would rather see one more shot than one fewer, right? More often than not, I would sort of be on the other side. I'd rather see a premature stoppage than a super late one that jeopardizes or impacts a career and brain health. But my goodness, these Warriors in a championship setting, it's a really tricky thing. But the good thing is that Mark Goddard has established so much goodwill that I'll give him the benefit of the doubt every day of the week. We'll see if Longo has any thoughts on that coming up in about 12 minutes here on the DraftKings Network. Good to have you with us on the Anik Florian Podcast as we continue to recap UFC 292. Now, in terms of the promotion's appetite to have Sean O'Malley or Aljamain Sterling as the champion, never before in UFC history, and I'm quoting MMA History Today, has the promotion uploaded an entire pay-per-view main event to their YouTube channel immediately. Seems to be all hands on deck, Ken Flo, in terms of trying to bloat Sean O'Malley into the next big thing. I'll be on SportsCenter tomorrow at 12:40 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and those calls don't come in for me very often. This dude is about to take over, and while I think it ambitious to suggest that he could get to a Conor McGregor level, I'm not going to start putting things past him on his celebration Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think with everything he has going on, all the different businesses and side hustles he's got going on, he may have not even needed this push, but it's clear the UFC machine wanted to get behind him, and now they are activating. They're in activation mode, and that is a very good thing for a fighter. And it's rare that they even do that, right, for someone like that. And O'Malley, he's got that look, man. He's very unique. There's no one really like him, I don't know, man. I think he's going to be a huge, huge star. We talked about this on the last show. I said, maybe it's not this time against Aljo, but at some point he's going to be a superstar. The time is now, man. The time is now. Yeah. It's that simple. And I think it's well-deserved just based on his style and who he is.
So if you don't know, oftentimes if you're watching SportsCenter after a pay-per-view, you might get a Sterling O'Malley highlight, and then you'll get a freeze frame when he actually lands that right hand. By them distributing this fight to the masses, my daughter saw it on Snapchat. Don't judge me. She's not really on social media, only that application. My wife had seen this, right? They don't engage necessarily. This knockout is all over the goddamn joint, Kenny. And people just gravitate towards Sean O'Malley, right? As I said on the post-fight show, you don't have to be a master orator like Chael Sonnen to draw mass appeal and have the it factor. And, I watched Sean O'Malley's entire 23-minute media scrum, Ken Flo, and I thought it was fucking brilliant. So, this dude's got a lot of the package, if not the total package.
I can always tell how big a fight is. This sounds kind of lame, but I can always tell how big a fight is when my wife kind of knows a little bit about it. Like she knows that there's a fight going on, whatever, but she's like, hey, yeah, isn't that O'Malley guy fighting in the main event? And I'm like, you never know any of the names, and she knew exactly who it was. We don't have cable. We don't watch television, but she knew about it. So that to me is usually an indicator when the casuals know exactly who's fighting, when it's happening, and that it's going to be a pretty big fight. And then after they win, everyone's kind of talking about, it's a very big deal for the UFC and for O'Malley. So, and again, coming from where I came from, the lighter weight classes never got this kind of love, man.
Right.
This is a 135-pounder that is garnering all this attention. And when you put that into perspective from where we were as a sport, 10 years, 15 years ago, it's quite the accomplishment. Quite the accomplishment. It's incredibly impressive.
There have been a lot of bantamweight title fights on free TV, so to speak, right? Even Dominic Cruz and TJ Dillashaw fighting for the belt in 2016 was a UFC fight night. This was Aljamain Sterling's second UFC main event. Right. Sean O'Malley can headline at 135 pounds. That is a tremendous luxury for the promotion. So as we spin this thing forward, Sean O'Malley has torn cartilage of some kind or a torn muscle below the rib, wasn't able to grapple for 5 or 6 weeks. It limited his sparring. I think it makes this feat all the more impressive. And I think it certainly, as he alluded to on the post show, contributed to some of his nerves that he wasn't able to put in the requisite work. And I think it's astonishing that Aljamain Sterling was 0 for 2 for takedowns. And gosh, there's so much we can get into. But I think at this point, it's optimistic to think that he's going to be able to fight Marlon Chito Vera in December. But once again, the stars seem to align for Sean O'Malley if you don't want to fight Merab Dvalishvili or Corey Sandhagen in title defense number 1. And I say that with all due respect to the magnificent challenge that is Marlon Chito Vera, but it looks as though if everybody's healthy, it is going to be UFC 296 probably. Well, unless it's Leon Edwards and Colby as well, but UFC 296, O'Malley v. Cheeto 2.
And it's a great fight, man. Obviously you have the history, you have the style matchup, you have two guys that really are not very fond of each other, two guys that are extremely aggressive, that are great strikers. They both fought on the same night last night. It's a great story, send it.
Yeah. So congratulations to Sean O'Malley, to his entire team, Augusto Tanquino Mendez, Tim Welch, Brandon Harris, everybody else. My twin bro was sitting with Sean O'Malley's family, and he said they are just outstanding people. So you can feel good about that. Sean O'Malley has moved almost his entire family from Montana to Arizona. His dad is the lone holdout, but I think they're going to get him there soon. And to be able to financially do that for your family, right? Sorry, Mom. Can't buy you a house yet. Can't buy you a house yet. Actually, we're never going to be able to buy you a house, Mom. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. My late father-in-law would always say, play the lottery. And I'm not talking scratch tickets, folks. Go play your state lottery. Play the tickets like every day of the Mega Millions. Change your life. All right, so Longo's going to join us quickly, and I almost hesitate to pivot off of this fight, but I am going to do that and get to Ian Machado, Gary, and Zhang Weili and some of these other performers at UFC 292. Magnum Zhang Weili defends her title here. She told me in the fighter meeting, as thoughtful a fighter meeting as I can ever remember being a part of, by the way. I mean, my goodness, we felt like we were talking to fucking Bruce Lee, 50-43, 50-44, 49-45. All hail Zhang Weili. I don't know what you have for us on the Darce defense as well. The one time she was threatened in the fight, but just an incredible performance that had everything to it, including submission defense.
Yeah, listen, I had a feeling, I had a gut feeling this was going to be a grappling heavy game plan. And that's exactly what we got. Some great exchanges on the feet for sure. But I think she realized that the easiest path to victory was taking this fight to the ground. There was one point where it did look like it was pretty tight. I think the angle made it a little bit too difficult for Lemos to finish. It was tight, but I think the angle was not quite there on it. And it definitely seemed like it was something Pacheco was looking to have up her sleeve to try to catch Zhang Weili off guard. But this is a woman that really did her homework. And John, absolutely, I could see that, her being very charismatic at that meeting. First of all, kudos to her for trying to learn English, which is extremely difficult. She has made major improvements. She didn't know one word of English when she started in this sport. To see where she's at just shows her intelligence and her dedication to that, which is awesome. And then seeing some of the countdown stuff, with her behind the scenes, I probably said the show wrong, but just the behind the scenes stuff. She just seems like an absolute sweetheart, just a very kind human being. But then she gets in that cage, dude, and she turns into something very, very far from that. Just amazing to watch, man. Just a tremendous athlete. We always talk about that, but she does her homework. She has improved her technical skills on the ground, on the feet so much. Good luck trying to beat her.
All right, so I'm here with my Zhang Weili fighter card, and I just want to write down. I go into these fighter meetings with most of my notes done. These are the things that I wrote down based upon our fighter meeting. Perhaps you'll find this interesting. So she reads a lot about Chinese culture, right? If I'm Tatiana Suarez listening to the Anik Florian podcast, I'm like, God damn it. Fucking Zhang Weili reading about Chinese culture, fucking getting better every day. Said she was going to wrap around her like water. I fight against my laziness every day. I fight myself every day. Discipline. Regaining the title is hard. Defending it is harder. Sees herself as the real opponent. Just relaxed and much happier in there than ever before. And then she sees untapped potential and improvements when we ask where she is relative to her fighting prime. So, she was certainly like water. And my gosh, she's a real problem. And it doesn't really matter, I guess, whether or not she's the number one pound for pound women's mixed martial arts athlete in the world. I think Larissa Pacheco is cannonball coming, to be sure. And there's some other fighters in that conversation as well. I think Erin Blanchfield and Tyler Santos, both fighting this weekend, are two of the top 11 pound for pound women in the world, right, as far as the UFC is concerned. So there's a lot of talent in the women's game right now. But we got to give Zhang Weili all her flowers. As far as her next title defense is concerned, Kenny. So China's far from South Florida, but the foundation could be laid for Yan Xiaonan as title challenger against her countrywoman Zhang Weili. You could also do Zhang Weili, Tatiana Suarez. Seemed as though Zhang Weili expressed an appetite for that in her post-fight comments. What do you think they do with Zhang Weili? Tatiana Suarez, Yan Xiaonan seem to be the most prominent names, and do you have a preference of those two?
Yeah, I would say Tatiana Suarez probably makes the most amount of sense. I don't know what the appetite is to have two females from China do it at this stage of the game. I think Xiaonan definitely there's a case there for sure. I think the stylistic matchup of Tatiana Suarez and her recent win makes it a little bit more interesting to me. And it's not exactly clear who I think is going to win. For a long time, I didn't think there was anyone out there that would be able to beat someone like a Tatiana Suarez. But when I see the improvements that Zhang Weili is making and has made, she's a problem. And the fact that she's actually shorter, stockier, makes it that much more of a problem. When you're trying to get underneath someone's center of mass, when you're trying to attack those legs, you want them to be nice and tall, right? So you can do that in some ways. It makes striking more difficult, but to enter into their legs, it makes it that much more challenging when you're shorter and stockier. So sign me up. I love that fight.
You sound like that Argus integrated defense guy there a little bit, you know, man? All right. So, we'll see what happens, right? I just feel like sort of like lifetime achievement award for Tatiana Suarez. She's been through so much that I would absolutely give her the title fight, right? So much in terms of, thyroid cancer taking away her Olympic dreams, and then major injuries taking away years potentially of her mixed martial arts career and or prime. Lorenzo Fertitta always would say strike while the iron is hot. And metrically, I don't know what's a bigger fight, Tatiana Suarez or Yan Xiaonan. I do believe Yan Xiaonan can play the heel in China. And yes, there's a healthy appetite for that fight. Like, I can actually wrap my head around that long trip because that gets my blood boiling. Like, that's an exciting fight for me to see those two go head to head. But I do think Tatiana Suarez has to have the inside lane right now, and just got to give her that championship opportunity. I think she has deserved it. All right. Ian Machado Gary over Neil Magny by unanimous decision. One of the scorecards was 30-24. Don't necessarily have a problem with it. This man is just married to the game and does an open workout in an impromptu fashion at an Irish pub in Boston the night before the fight. He loves the preparation, Kenny. His ears are as open as his mind. He is about to buy a house in Brazil, which I think is going to be his primary home, at least right now. And he's going to sort of get away from this nomadic life that he has been living. But again, I just don't think people understand the gravity of how good this guy is. But you know what? Ray Longo has made his way back from Boston to Garden City, New York. So let us get to Raymond Peter Longo. And we really appreciate this, man. You doing okay? Are you at the gym right now?
I stopped at the gym, so I wouldn't have made it. But listen, I love you guys, and I would do anything for you. But this was insane. I had, thank God, Bazooka did a great job driving, but it took us 5 hours, which should be like a 3.5 hour trip maybe. But, and then at the last minute, Quinto, I sent you the video. That's why I said there's luggage in the seat.
Oh, I didn't get it.
In between my wife and I, Quinto, there's a suitcase. Everybody was jammed in there. You couldn't see out the back window, but that's the way, man. And that's, I think that's going to be the gist of this whole talk today. But I tell you, 3 months ago, you come off 2 great wins. You go into this. It's the fight game, man. It's a crazy, crazy thing. But emotionally, if you're not grounded and you don't have your priorities straight, you will definitely get swept out to sea. But let's hit it, man. Kenny's good to see you, buddy.
Great to see you.
All right, we have a lot to get into, but I do want to start on a lighter note because you sent me a video in the car driving back with Dennis Bazooka and Ally Quinta, and you're like, "We're coming, John," and I just don't want to get this reputation as a dictator who's like hazing you to get back so we can do the Anik Florian podcast.
No, I just wanted to let you know, man, I'm trying. I really
of course.
At first, 7 o'clock seemed good. And then I was like, holy shit, man, with traffic, who the hell knows, but we made it.
We're here.
That's all that matters, man.
This show revolves around you. Well, we appreciate you extending yourself to be sure. We're glad that you made it home safely.
Yeah.
So, yes, this sport is a whirlwind, thrill on one side, agony on the other, and there's a lot to get into as far as this main event is concerned, as far as Chris Weidman's comeback is concerned and everything else. And you making the trek, of course, from Vegas to Boston.
Yeah,
I mean, crazy. I know, man. I know. So I guess I would just like to start with Aljamain Sterling taking the microphone after the fight and saying that he underestimated Sean O'Malley. And I don't necessarily intend to put you on the spot, but I feel like Aljamain Sterling is not alone in terms of not necessarily understanding the magnitude of how maybe good this guy is. Is that fair to say?
I would think so. Look, the guy's good. He's a great striker. There's no question about it. Look, all three judges gave Aljo the first round, and I think deservingly so. But, in between rounds, I really told Aljo, let's go kick heavy. It's offsetting his punches. I mean, what I was looking at in the first round was a guy that didn't want to commit. I think he was afraid of the takedown. We knew that was going to happen, but I wasn't really sure. I think O'Malley expected Aljo to do in the first round what he did in the second round. And Aljo's point was that he could have made it like an Adesanya Romero fight, but it would have been so unpleasing to the crowd, which I'm surprised because normally he doesn't talk like he gives a shit about the crowd, but he did say that because I think the burden would have been on Sean. He would have been down 2 rounds. If Aljo just does the same thing in the first round, I don't think he was making a move. Now, I think it was because he was waiting for Aljo to shoot in, but then somebody said he did have a bad rib. Maybe that played into it too, that he was just going to keep his distance. But motherfucker was accurate. He hit a beautiful counter. I mean, I'm a striking guy. I love it. And, hats off to him, man. He caught Aljo coming in. And, normally Aljo, goes for the leg a little differently off of the cross, but he caught him. Nobody else has been able to find Aljo's head. But hats off to him. I got nothing but, respect for what he did. So, great counterpuncher. And Aljo did say the movement against the cage, was a little frustrating, but he was winning and all three judges had him winning. And I think that would have been the way the fight would have won. It wouldn't have been exciting, but then it would have been on Sean to make it exciting, and then who knows what would have happened.
That's a great point, Ray, and it gets me wondering how much of that, or maybe the lack of patience on the part of Aljo, had to do with him, had to do with the trash talk going back and forth, and the fact that UFC had this guy in O'Malley. He's the exciting guy. Aljo's the kind of tactical grappler. Yeah.
I look at it. You'd have to ask him, but it appears that it, has played into. Look, it is what it is. But he did make the walk after 3 months. He 100% didn't want to do it a couple of months ago. But once he committed, he had a good camp. There's absolutely no excuses. But the UFC wanted what they wanted, and they got what they wanted for sure.
Yeah.
Kenny, I just want to jump in here, but. Yep. We can't just bury that, Ray. Right? 25 hard minutes 15 weeks ago. And I'm just quoting Aljamain Sterling, footwork and lateral movement, he said he was underprepared for, right? And, so much of the first 3-4 weeks, I'm just saying we're about getting his injuries right. And this fight happened on the challenger's timeline, and it is part of the discussion thereafter.
Yeah.
That's all. I'm not trying to make excuses. O'Malley was, injured to whatever degree, but this might happen on the challenger's timeline. That's all.
Yeah, without a doubt. There's no question about it. I don't think it's a secret that everything's stacked against them, but I don't want to take away anything. I mean, it's a great, I know what it feels like, man. I know what it feels like 3 times, and I'm happy for Welsh, and they did a great job with the guy. And, God bless them that they got the machine behind them. You know what I mean? I was never that lucky. You know what I mean? With all of the champions, they had to really earn it and fucking fight their way to it. And this kid proved it too. So I want those guys to enjoy the success just like I did, just like Aljo did. And it's all good. You know what I mean? It really is. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Ray, no worries. No, was there any discussion between you and Aljo and the rest of the squad about, the training partners that you guys, I know it was very early after, but because I'd imagine it'd be very difficult to find a sparring partner that can replicate the length and the style and speed of someone like O'Malley. But was there any discussion about that, or how that sparring went, and maybe how that could be adjusted in the future? Or
I'm going to say, and like again, you'd have to really Aljo, because he always has a different perspective on it. But we had lanky, tall guys in there, so I think I think what I didn't see in the training was, cutting off the octagon with the footwork, and we kind of knew he was going to do it. But I figured Aljo would just make that adjustment, in there. But the guy does move really, really well. So it even if it threw him, he still won the round. You know what I mean? So he can move all he wants. If Aljo wanted to stand in the center of the octagon, then he would have had to come to him. So there's tactically, I think that's an easy fix. That's nothing crazy, but he moves well. So, but it wasn't like he lost the round because of that. But I think it may be, confused him enough to make him leap in a little. The range, he was having a hard time getting the range, and I think he was feeling it out. It would have been nice to have another second round exactly like the first round, because then either one of those guys was going to have to make something happen, or it was going to be a shitty fight. But but I do believe if we, go ahead. I'm sorry, John.
No, you go. It's a Ray Longo minute. It's your show. No, your fucking show.
And I think if it would have did that, I would have liked to seen how it played out. But again, the fact that he said he actually brought up Adesanya Romero, I said, man, it's just about getting the W, though, man. You have nothing to prove, man. Right. Like, I think as much as he says it doesn't bother him, I'm confused over the hatred this guy gets. This guy's a good guy. You see the way he handled the microphone. He's not making excuses. He walked out of that fucking octagon like a man. You know what I mean? You hear his story at the press conference, I'm almost in tears. You know what I mean? Like, I just really hope I could be a mentor to the guy, and he knows that I always have his back as an older person. You know what I mean? Like, maybe, he might have missed that growing up a little bit, but he's a good dude. I'm telling you right now, the guy's a good dude. So when I hear this type of hatred, like coming out of the octagon, it's like, fuck you, Al. I mean, like, it's not even like boo, it's getting personal. Like, I don't know where it's coming from, but that's like, again, it's part of the game, I guess, and like I said, insane. It's insane, man, so it's,
I'll tell you where it's coming from. Yeah, and you know where it's coming from. He's the only fighter in UFC history to win the undisputed title by way of disqualification. And then there have been other circumstances surrounding title defenses. And but no, I mean, I don't want to get frustrated and sad today. He was just dripping with class after the fact, and he was almost too honest. He was almost too honest as far as some things were concerned. By the way, I just read a text from you. Dennis Bazooka is gunning it. Like, you're making me sound like a pledge marshal trying to get you to the show.
Wait, I feel awful. Cody. That wasn't me. That was Cody.
Oh, now I feel much better. He's just messing around.
But Dennis Bazooka was gunning it.
Your wife's probably like, John doesn't pay enough for us to be going this fast on the highway.
I'm giving my wife an A+ this trip. She put up with a lot of shit. She's absolutely awesome.
So I try not to speak out of both sides of my mouth, but I did think it was a miss by Aljamain Sterling to not ask for the immediate rematch after the fact, even if you have no intention of taking it and you want to leave the division. I think he's conflicted really because he has Merab Dvalishvili, on the brainstem in that moment. And he's always sort of that unselfish type who wants to put his guy forward, right? But I also don't necessarily want to see him cut down to 135 pounds a million more times. So what can you tell us? Probably nothing, but what do you think? I mean, he did at the post-fight press conference say, I would like to think that I've earned my right to get an immediate rematch. I'm going to remember this night for a very long time. It's going to fuel me for just bigger and greater things.
Oh, I'm going to say he's going to look at that fight no less than 950,000 times, because that's who he is. I mean, and I hope I told him, go on vacation, enjoy yourself, man. Please don't beat yourself up over this. I think he has his priorities straight. He knows what to concentrate on. But getting to the rematch thing, he could say whatever he wants. The UFC's going to do what the UFC's going to do. You could bark and cry all you want, especially him. Then they're not going to, because he's asking for it. But with that said, Sean Shelby, and I hope I'm not misstating this. I mean, in the back I was delirious, but Sean Shelby said, "Do you want a rematch?" Aljo said, "100%. I 100% want the rematch."
Oh, wow.
And so he did. There was talk. I mean, I'm going to say Sean asked him. He said it, and so I'm saying he's getting a rematch.
Good.
I mean, they said the numbers were outstanding for the biggest bantamweight pay-per-view. Is that true?
Wow.
Somebody told me.
Oh, yeah.
Sure,
So,
it was.
You know, they're going to be dictated by money. It doesn't matter now who it is. If they made a bank on that thing, they'll do it again for sure. So Sean did say that. Aljo said 100%, no questions about it. And I think that's that's where we are. So, and I think he will make the adjustments. You know, I think he's got a good idea of he knows exactly what happened. That's the good news.
Yeah.
He knows he overextended himself at the wrong time and, whatever. But again, I have beautiful, beautiful counterpunch.
All right. That's some real behind the scenes intel there from Ray Longo. You got anything on the Rob's timeline?
No, that's
very good.
That's interesting. He's going, I think
that's what we're talking about, Ray. Peeling back the curtain a little bit, not fucking keeping everything so close to the vest,
He flew to Los Angeles today to see the doctor, so we'll have more of an idea on his timeline when he comes back.
All right.
But he did smack about 4 people this whole weekend.
Yeah.
He was smacking a lot of people. I bet. He's like, he should go into that slap league, I think. You know that somebody was hassling Pedro Munoz's wife, and Merab slapped the guy right in the face. The guy ran away.
Good.
Imagine that.
Good.
Guys are being a piece of shit to Pedro's
Was he from Boston or Philly? Bostonian or Philadelphian?
I don't know.
Definitely wasn't a New Yorker. You guys can be assholes, though, huh? No?
I guess. I don't know. It is. I guess.
By the way, someone came up to me in Boston, and this guy knew exactly what to say to get a photo, right? He's like, I'm not a Minuteman. Right? I'm like, that's what's up. Me neither, man. Neither.
That's what I got to do. I got to start sending people over to you. That's going to be a good gig. That's funny. That's a good bit.
By the way,
guy said he wasn't a Minuteman.
I just got a text from my wife because my son, I think, wanted to have a cameo on the Anik Florian Podcast tonight at 8 p.m.
Nice.
Eastern.
He's a cutie.
My voice is, thank you. It's I don't know if my voice is going to hold up if I keep acting like a lunatic. So I guess I would just say, and we have to get to Chris Weidman. I just have so much respect for Aljamain Sterling, and my heart does go out to him as far as the venom that seemingly comes his way, even in the tri-state area in New Jersey, which was nothing if not stunning. And if I'm being completely honest, sometimes he can be a little bit quirky and not maximize the mic time. But this weekend he did. And even if I thought he was almost too honest after the fact, the numbers on his post-fight comments on the internet are just absurd. And I just have so much respect for him. And as far as his UFC bantamweight resume is concerned, I'm not saying he's the best fighter, skill for skill, the division's ever seen, but let me know when somebody surpasses his UFC bantamweight resume in terms of accomplishments.
There you go. I agree 100%. Well, look, John, at the end of the day, man, it's how you carry yourself as a person, right? And these are all little life lessons to see who you are. And I think his character is really unbelievable. The way he spoke about Weidman at the press conference and the way he spoke about his upbringing and, how he beat the odds and made it. This is a little bleep. I know it sucks. Nobody wants to lose. I'm a fucking sore loser. Trust me. I've learned how to do this. Like, I don't care how bad it is. I'll always come on and do the show and try to handle myself with, grace and, dignity. But, this is what molds you. This is what really makes you. And I'm so happy for these guys, the way they handled themselves in defeat. And look, you can't keep going up and up and up. You know what I mean? That's why I always say this. I love what Khabib did. He quit while he was on top. He had a great resume, and you never have to deal with this. You know what I mean? And it might be harder to do what Khabib did than even go out, even after a loss. So it's all good. But I think, again, these guys handle themselves like gentlemen. They walked out like men. And that's it, man. I got a really nice text that it was something to the effect of, I'm proud to say I could let my 11-year-old son watch, the post-fight interviews and, be proud of what he's going to hear. You know what I mean? So there's a message in there, and I just can't say enough about it. I couldn't give a shit, man, really about.
Yeah.
I want everybody to win, but they're just all winners in life, and I don't think you could put a price on that, man. He knows where his priorities are. I think I had a good chat with him, and that's it.
Just make sure that guy's son doesn't listen to your foul mouth on the Anik Florian podcast. And we're good.
Right. Another guy that you can be really proud of is Chris Weidman, who, showed the heart of a champion, the determination that he showed out there. Again, just coming back to fight is a huge accomplishment. But can you talk a little bit about what you thought about Chris's performance in his first time back since that devastating leg break?
Yeah, look, man, I think Chris is a winner all around. I'm happy for Chris with this fight. I mean, just the fact that, he came back from the injury. He's getting older. It's a 2.5 year, layoff. I mean, that's a lot to overcome without an injury. That injury was actually worse than Anderson Silva's because his bone came through the skin, which they say is really bad. So the fact that he went in there and, fought a tough Hawaiian dude, man, who's a super nice guy. I thought that second round was phenomenal. He had the whole crowd cheering for him. You know what I mean? He had a lot of support, right, John?
Oh my gosh!
In the second round when he was like waving him in, or I think he might have said, "Are you kidding me? You're kicking me." I think he told him, "You're kidding? You're kicking me in my bad leg." Like, what the fuck is that?
His walkout was unbelievable. It's the only time in 12 years for me on a UFC microphone where I was like trying with my arm trying to get the crowd going at one point. And I've never done that before, right? It was like an out-of-body experience. And I don't like New Yorkers. It was really cool.
So listen, I mean, ESPN covered the whole since the leg break to now, and I think it's going to make for a great story. It'll be inspirational. That's what I was kind of telling him. Just the fact that you made that walk, and he got his legs beat up, man. That's got to be look. Like again, he's a special cat, but man, you had a bad break on that leg like that, and you're getting your legs chewed up, both of them. That other leg, he had a softball coming off. I guess he did the kick with it or did something, but just crazy, man. Just my hat goes off to him. It just was great seeing his family. The kids are growing up, because he moved, so you don't get to see anything. So I think we're coming at it from a different angle. Like, again, everybody wants to win, but all these guys have done really great. They've changed their lives, and that, to me, that's what it's all about. I'm not going to cry over spilt milk. There's nothing you could do about it. Even, people said, the fight was stopped too early. If I'm the ref, I'm not stopping the fight. No, I wouldn't have stopped the fight there, but I can't complain with it either. You know what I mean? But Aljo was 100% coherent right after the fight and right after the fight in the back. So, I would have liked to see that a little differently, but besides that, it's all good, man. We move on.
Anything going on?
We're moving on, and we'll move on as a team.
Ray, any injuries that Chris sustained from that last fight? Obviously, he took a lot of leg kicks. Anything else that happened that you know of?
No injuries like that. I think the calf kicks, he wasn't walking. Both legs were beat up. So I don't think anything, I hope not. He's going to have to get the leg he had the surgery on, an MRI to make sure everything was all right. But we'll see how that goes. But besides that, I think it was, just the calf kicks. And look, the way he fought through that, I thought, most guys would have stopped, I think. But he kept trying to make the fight, So
guy is so valiant and just affable and lovable, and just for him and his family, I'm just so happy they were able to get through this experience. And but I will say, in terms of the post-fight visuals that I saw, the left knee was the one that Tavares primarily destroyed. He did a lot of damage to the right leg as well, the surgically repaired right leg, Ray. But the right leg was the one that was being iced. and the left leg was not. And Dr. Davidson seemed to intimate to Dana White, who said at the post-fight press conference that he thinks maybe there might be an ACL or an MCL or something. The right knee, the right leg, I think Chris seems concerned about.
No.
Is that not true? You're looking at me like I'm crazy.
No, that's not true. What you said.
Okay.
The ice was on the right leg. He had no ice on the left leg, and his ACL.
Correct. That's right.
Oh, you said no. The left leg got attacked, but he had no ice there.
Correct.
I'm saying the ice was on the right, the surgical leg.
Right.
That's a fact.
Correct.
I'm saying the ACL is 100% not torn.
Good. Great. All right. Well,
yeah. So I'm saying I don't know who made that. Because I'm unaware of that.
I could be totally off base, but if you go watch Dana White's post-fight press conference, I think there was some communication with the doctor, and I think Dana said, I forget which CL or something, that maybe they could be concerned about. But yeah, he'll get an MRI and we'll see. But he was very clear about not wanting to retire, whether or not he was privy to Dana White's comments about wanting him to retire. I don't know. Am I putting you on the spot if I ask you what you think about all of that stuff? I know you're not in the business of retiring your own fighters, but I don't mean to put you on the spot.
That's what's the question? Oh, isn't that
There's
crazy?
no
I blacked
question,
out
man.
right when you were going to ask. What
is your wife just hanging out at the gym waiting to go home?
You know what? Wait, hold on a second.
I don't know if he's hearing me as well as
Phil me, you in here? Oh, she's here. She's behind. No, I'm not.
So I would like to let you people go home.
You want to say hello?
I would like to let you people go home.
Oh, no, but no. So wait, let me just get that. So Dane,
your connection
Wi-Fi
is starting to sour. Cody, perhaps we can reconnect with this handsome godfather, Ray Longo. His wife was about to come in. But I'd like to let these people go home. I mean, my goodness. This is really not going to help my public approval rating with the listenership that, these people all rushed from this very challenging weekend to the gym instead of their homes to do this silly little podcast.
We have Ray permanently.
Cody's got a lot more patience than I do keeping this freeze frame right now. Yeah, he's like, give me a sec to fix this.
There we go. He's back.
Yeah, baby. What do we got? Retirement talk? I might be slap happy at this point. I might start just acting stupid.
No, we're done. We're done. We want to give you a chance for some final comments. I was very moved by Aljamain Sterling in our fighter meeting, talking about sort of the lack of parental support that he had as a kid and for his senior year of high school, like trying to beg his parents to show up for things. And he was very, very impacted in life by that lack of support. And, I hope the fan base will just give the guy a fucking break.
Well, he's got me now. I'll show up at his graduation next time.
Oh, there you go.
Okay.
All right. Hey, why don't you people go home and much love to the wife and family. And I know you're dealing with an injury and we wish you all the best. We'll talk to you next week.
You're the man, Ray. Rest up.
I'll see you next week. I got going in for surgery this week, so say a prayer for me.
Hey,
you see me walking with the cane? Awesome, guys. I love you guys, man. It was unfortunately it was a bad night, but obviously it's part of the game, and I'm happy for all the other people that know what I went through with the happiness, and it's all good. I enjoyed a moment, Sean, with your team, and we'll see you in there again.
All right, we love you, buddy. We wish you all the best. And Stefania Bell told me in 8 days you're going to be great, so we'll see you soon. Okay?
Oh, she's the best, man. Really like her, man.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, buddy. Sleep well.
I'll talk to you later.
There he is.
Bye.
The Ray Longo Minute every week here on the Anik and Florian Podcast. My goodness. His wife's probably like, what is going on? Like, have them send you a check.
Dude, but I mean, you got to think about at that age, all right? Because Ray's been doing martial arts longer than we've been alive, and then he's still doing this thing. He cornered in Boston. He drove 5 hours to New York. He's like, oh, yeah. By the way, we got to stop at the gym so I could do the podcast. His wife's got to be like, are you kidding me? And he's still doing this at 60, whatever. I don't know how old he is, but like this, it's unbelievable. So, Ray, thank you again. And we'll be thinking of him as he's getting surgery on the hip this week. Right?
Yes, he's getting his hip replacement. Finally. If you have seen him limping around and having a hard time, especially on the decline, you'll be very happy to know he's going to get fixed. And guy's going to be $1 million next week here on the Anik and Florian podcast. All right, we have a lot more to get into when it comes to UFC 292. I do want to go 3 wide and bring Big Gun Brian PETRIE into the conversation because he's been waiting patiently as the New Yorkers work their way back to Garden City. What's up, Big Gun?
What's going on, boys?
So we like that PETRIE dulcet tones a little bit later in the day, right? Sound like smoking cigars all day. Huh?
No, kids started school. These kids, they just get me sick every fucking week. It's crazy. But no, we're doing okay. It's just in my throat. We're all right.
All right. So I'm going to go to you first on this, and then I want to hear Ken Flo's thoughts on Ian Machado Gary. But I do think there's an overreaching theme here when it comes to Ian Machado Gary and Sean O'Malley. There's connective tissue when it comes to them as strikers and how good and fast and skilled they are and how coachable they are and maybe how underestimated they are, even by some sharp MMA minds out there. What were your thoughts on Ian Gary and everything that this fight week and friction with Neil Magny held?
So I love the friction with Neil Magny. Didn't love the cage antics. I mean, usually when you can talk all the shit you want in the cage, let's squash it up. But I mean, he said no. That Neil Magny's comeback. Listen, he looked great. I mean, he looked measured in there. I thought I wanted a finish. You had a 1-leg fighter in there. I think there's a lot of Ian Gary haters because how confident he is, and my friends especially are texting me, how could he not finish a 1-leg? All that shit. But I thought he looked cerebral in there. I thought he looked good. I love the call out of Wonder Boy. I think that's a striker versus striker. I think that's a fun fight. I think that's a smart matchup for him. Not many people have outstruck Wonder Boy, and Ian Gary wants to be the best striker. He said it. So the leg kicks were, crazy. The first 2 put Neil Magny right on his ass, and I'm holding a Neil Magny tick, and I go, we're in some trouble here. He can't even take a leg kick without getting put on his butt. I said, we're in some trouble. But yeah, he looked fantastic. I mean, I've always liked Ian Gary. This was a number play. But the number failed me this time. So what are you going to do?
Kenny, oftentimes when it comes to criticism, I fall on the side of the fighter. It seems like the New Hampshire and our producer, Cody Merrow, is coming out a little bit. I know Daniel Cormier also was questioning on the broadcast that maybe Ian Machado Gary should have finished, but thought he just was very methodical and didn't over risk. And I mean, he destroyed the guy, but even in his post-fight interview with Joe Rogan, like the highest level guys, right? Like, I don't know, man. I don't have an ounce of criticism for Ian Gary not getting the finish. 30-24 for me is basically a finish.
I might be somewhere in the middle. Now, I picked Ian Gary to win. I think that there's no question about it. He's got elite striking skills. Absolutely. And I do think he can be elite in that division. But I guess I still stand where I did before in saying that I don't see the championship yet in his future, but I do see him being elite. And I think anytime you're able to dominate someone like Neil Magny, I think it's a great sign. Magny has been there and done that. He has a ton of experience. He can be very awkward and difficult to go out there and beat, let alone dominate like Ian Gary did. So I think those are all phenomenal signs for Ian Gary and his team. I do think that there were opportunities for him to go out there and finish that fight. I think it would have been that much better for him. And I probably would have changed my mind a little bit on his ability to become a champion in the welterweight division, just because to me that's more a sign of a guy who is mastering his craft, right? And I think that Ian Gary fell a little bit short of that. But as far as all the tools, the weapons, everything he was using, and how he even started it off by weakening Neil Magny, I thought it was phenomenal. And, here's a kid who's definitely big for the division, knows how to use it. And I just thought that he had more opportunities to go out there and finish. I was with DC on some of that. Not always easy to do, though. Way easier for us to say that from the outside looking in. But I did think that when you see the disparity in skill between Gary and Magny, you probably would have liked to see him close the door on that fight. But sometimes it just doesn't happen.
There's still a lot of unknowns when it comes to the grappling of both Sean O'Malley and Ian Machado Gary. And I think for Sean O'Malley, he certainly would have liked to have had the intel of maybe getting taken down by Aljamain Sterling and feeling that and having the opportunity, Kenny, right, to get back up.
Great point.
But Machado Gary is going to have roots in Brazil. He's still going to be rooted at Killcliff FC with all of the best welterweights in the world. I think depending on the stylist he's fighting, he may bounce around a little bit. This kid's on the fast track at 25 years old, and I do think there's going to come a time on the Anik and Florian podcast, even if he has suffered a loss at that point in time, if the show's still going on, that Kenny's going to say, I now see world championship potential in Ian Machado Gary because at 25 years old, became a judo black belt at 18. He's just not going to be denied. He's just not going to be denied. And that's not promotional hyperbole. I really think the kid's going to get there. But again, there are a lot of unknowns. It looks as though Kenny wants to go November, Madison Square Garden for Ian Gary. Presumably that would be Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. And then a headlining spot in Dublin, Ireland in 2024. So I would be absolutely stunned if we don't see Ian Machado Gary and Stephen Wonderboy Thompson in less than 3 months live on pay-per-view at MSG.
That's a great fight. Yeah. That's a phenomenal fight. Makes a lot of sense.
All right. So Marlon Chito Vera over Pedro Munoz by unanimous decision. Mario Bautista by Damon Blackshear by unanimous decision. Those were the other two bantamweight fights for on the pay-per-view main card. I really like this Bautista cat. Blackshear got off to a pretty good start in that fight. Anything for us, my man, on either of those two fights in terms of this bantamweight heavy pay-per-view main card last weekend?
Yeah, I thought the Munoz fight was a lot closer than maybe some people gave it credit for. I thought Pedro was really in there. I thought that was I saw some Twitter people actually giving it to Pedro, obviously, but a very close fight. I mean, Pedro was wearing it. The Cheeto hits different. And Bautista, this is a guy who came in the UFC with a lot of hype, comes from a great camp, and then had some setbacks. And he's out there fighting a guy who's very tough to look good against on short notice, who just pulled a twister off, and he showed well. There was a minute in the second round. I'm like, Batista's slowing down a little bit here. He got a second win and won that third round and looked great. Blackshear's corner thought he was up 2 rounds. I didn't love that advice, but Batista's something I'm really going to keep an eye on. I really thought he was going to showcase his overall skill and maybe put a name if he would have got the Cody fight, if Cody didn't pull out, because I know Cody Garbrandt is he's not maybe elite anymore, but he's still a name. And I thought Batista could have really shown out in that fight, but I thought he looked great. I mean, the sky's the limit for him at that weight, and I can't wait to see him matched up. I mean, 135 is just an absolute Shark Tank right now.
Ken Flo, a stylistic flip up for sure for Mario Bautista going from Cody Garbrandt to Damon Blackshear. Not sure if you have anything on Bautista or Chito Vera or either of those two pay-per-view fights before I move to a few other things.
Yeah, I thought Bautista made some great adjustments in that fight. I thought the second round could have been for Damon Blackshear, by the way. I'm not sure you tell your fighter that when it's that close of a round, because you don't want to give up any rounds in this sport, right? But there's no way I would not have been confident in telling him that. That's for sure. But it was a close fight, but still, Bautista, he's a stud, man. Thought he made great adjustments, was able to stop a lot of those takedown attempts, showed that he's an excellent grappler in his own right. And it was cool. And the other fight you were talking about, Chito.
Marlon Chito Vera.
Yes, Chito and Munoz. That was another close one. Chito, I thought, again, this was just a classic Chito Vera fight, right? It's like this slow start, builds up, gets stronger, finds his rhythm in the third round, then decimates his guy. But it was good. I thought it was a really good performance for Chito Vera. I think Chito fundamentally needs to take his footwork to another level if he wants to be a champion in that insane division. And it might be his next one, right? He might fight Sean O'Malley next. And that plotting style, it's what allows him to hit so damn hard, but he's got to be bouncy. He's got to be in and out. He's got to be way more dynamic with his footwork if he wants to be a world champion, I think. If he wants to, I guess, sway the odds more in his favor, I should say, because his power is phenomenal. No question about that. I thought his hands looked much improved in this fight. He is making improvements. It didn't seem like he took any deep breaths during that fight, despite the crazy pace. And yeah, just Cheeto doing Cheeto things, and great win for him in a big spot. I saw value in Munoz. I went for it, and fair.
All right, a couple of other things that I want to get to on UFC 292, and Big Gun Brian Petrie, the commitment to this show is not lost on us. I appreciate the extended time tonight. I want to get to the Brads, Tavares, and Katona. Print the shirts. Always bet on cardio. Brad Katona, weaponizing cardio, right? This kid is impressive, man. Like an acquired taste, maybe, right? Maybe you don't want to like go break bread with him. I think he's all right. But Ken Flo, like Kenny, this kid is really all right.
Good. He's all right.
This kid is really tough and really good, and like
he's tough.
Just doesn't get tired. And Cody Gibson, just a hungry fight. And the Stephan Bonner, Forrest Griffin comparisons are not lost on me, Kenny. Like this was Jason Knight, Mississippi Mean suggested this is one of the best fights in UFC history, and I don't necessarily need to go there, but Kenny, this fight was outstanding, and I just think it speaks to the stakes and the commitment and the 13-week training camp and everything else.
Nonstop back and forth, and I think what Joe Rogan was saying when he said this is a fight, ladies and gentlemen, was that you go to that dark place in your soul, in your heart, when you're in a fight like that, where you're like, this isn't about who wins this round or who wins this fight. Like, you're fighting for your life. That was kind of the sense that I got when these guys were fighting. It felt like a street fight. And so in a lot of ways, it looked like a street fight. It wasn't the most technical fight in the world, but man, these guys were trying to take each other out every single second. The pace to start that fight was insane. And Katona, just slowly started pulling away from round after round, just stayed more active, was landing some really clean shots, and Gibson was just fading, man. He was throwing a lot of arm punches, and I think efficiency got the better of him, or a lack thereof got the better of him there. But Katona, man, came in shape, and it was just an action-packed fight because of it.
Bri, what do you got, kid?
Yeah, this is my mortal lock. I had Brad Katona. This is the last line that came out because it got, we didn't know until Tuesday. He opened at minus 175. I loaded up on that, went down to 170, loaded up again. I thought he was going to win in a completely different way. I thought he was going to grapple and beat up Cody because before Cody went on the show, he fought Ray Borg and got taken down like 7 times. He has that problem. He debuted against Aljamain Sterling in the UFC, was getting taken down. And Brad said, no, we're going to stand up. We're going to bang it out. I mean, he went for like some takedowns, but never really committed. And just the toughness of both those guys, such a back and forth fight. Brad had a huge welt inside his head. And then Cody, I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but he broke his eye orbital for sure. And there was a minute where he was like, oh shit, this killed. Yeah. I might quit, and then said, no, fuck that. Here's an uppercut. Amazing. Yeah. I mean, the toughness of those guys. And even, it just, that's a fight that I did not expect that to happen. I thought Katona would grapple and win that way because that's usually his game, and was pleasantly surprised to see them just go out and bang it out. Old school tough finale, which I felt like we haven't got that in a while. And it was awesome. I love it.
Cody Gibson's inner monologue is like, man, my orbital floor is shattered, but if I tough it out, I'll get 50 grand and maybe a UFC contract. And that's exactly what he got. He got the UFC contract, which is rare. And he also got the $50,000 bonus. So congrats to both Brad Katona and Cody Gibson. We also acknowledge Kurt Holloway, not Hollabaugh, Holloway, 36 years of age, was 0-4 in the UFC. Didn't believe this third UFC stint was going to materialize. Now he's the ultimate fighter he is in. And, he's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt pressure striker. And that's a really big win for him. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him do a little bit of damage there at 155 pounds. And then real quick, Ken Flo, on Brad Tavares. Chris Weidman was the story, and I just love the way Brad Tavares handled this entire week. He certainly was fighting for his home state of Hawaii with all of the devastation going on there. But he also had no time for questions about whether or not Weidman was going to open with a leg kick. Like he was primal. He was businesslike. He was no nonsense. And I thought it was an exceptional performance for a guy who's 23 fights into his UFC career.
Well, he was set up to be the asshole, right? Because either he goes out and loses or he beats the guy who broke his leg. So it was a tough spot to be in. But I thought he played it right mentally leading into that fight. I think he was saying the right things for him and his family, right? It's like, who cares about that guy's story? I'm trying to win and save my career here and put some food on the table. And I thought that he came in with that right mindset. And a Hawaiian is never going to back away from a fight, okay? I've been watching Tavares a long time. He's always been humble. He's always been a hard worker. I've seen major improvements in his game since his first UFC fight to where he was at now. Maybe not in his prime right now, his chin perhaps not what it used to be, but look at the row of killers that he has faced over the course of his career. Again, just staying true to that, Hawaiian nature, he will never say no to any fight out there. And I also got to mention, I don't always look at the comments. I was looking at some comments. Someone's like, Kenny saying Tavares is a big middleweight. What is he talking about? He's only 5'11". Did you see his legs? Have you seen his legs? And didn't he used to fight at 205, by the way? I think that, when you see a guy with that kind of build and those legs, you have to know those leg kicks are coming, especially given the injury. And, Tavares is so good at setting them up, working with the great Ray Sefo. He was just on point, did all the right things. And I think all the superlatives were right on point with his counter wrestling, his ability to stop those takedowns. Chris Weidman is not an easy guy to stop, especially up against the cage. He had all the right answers there. Congratulations to Brad Tavares.
Yeah, he was a star middle linebacker in high school. You don't get there by accident. No. He's a tremendous athlete. He's an absolute hoss. And he's been in there with Yoel Romero and Robert Whitaker, and just feel good for a really good dude. And it's like he's a father in his own right. And I just think his ability to stay focused amidst all of that noise, and especially the Hawaii stuff as well. Just wanted to do a little hat tip there to Brad Tavares. Congrats to Gregory Rodriguez. The elbows, perhaps somewhat controversial to some. Ken Flo's just such a violent motherfucker in his head that he's probably like, I'm just kidding. But Gregory Rodriguez, one of my Institute of Human Performance teammates, so we congratulate him. Just a great night for the mixed martial arts and combat sports leader, UFC 292. Largest gate in the history of TD Garden for a non-Stanley Cup final or NBA Finals game. And these UFC live events as commodities, just absolutely absurd right now. All right, Kenny, am I missing anything else? No, we got to move on. We got some predictions. UFC is going to be in Singapore, and if you like coffee and you like combat together, that's your reality. This Saturday, August 26th, main card, 8 a.m. Eastern on ESPN Plus. UFC Fight Night from Singapore. It is Holloway versus the Korean Zombie. This here is our main event challenge. And guys, you know what? I've been burning it at all ends. I don't have the updated standings, but what I can tell you, Ken Flo had 3 units on Ian Machado Gary. He also had 2 units on Aljamain Sterling. So all things considered, it was a good week for Kenny Florian. Well, no, Sterling, that didn't hit. But, and you did miss on Pedro Munoz. So maybe not as good a week as possible. We'll update those standings later. So
we'll get them.
All right, we have some predictions today. And part of the reason we're picking this preliminary fight, and all of these odds, by the way, courtesy of DraftKings Sportsbook. Heavyweight division, I think there's an interesting angle here between Junior Tafa and Parker Porter, and it's very close on the money line. So big gun Brian Petrie.
Yes.
Oh, and I like seeing your face now as we go.
All right. There you go.
Cody doing a nice job directing with cameras today. Justin Tafa's brother, Junior Tafa, minus 122. Parker Porter, plus 102. Porterhouse coming off a win. Yeah, that might not be a bad nickname, Parker Porterhouse.
I like the steakhouse for him. I mean, this guy's got to ramp. When he retires, he's got to open a steakhouse. I've been saying it for years. That's
right.
Yeah,
that's right. So he's coming off a win over Braxton Smith at UFC 288 not all that long ago. That came on the heels of a loss to Justin Tafa by knockout in Perth in February of this year. So now he tries the younger brother, Junior, who is 4-1, dropped his UFC debut to Mo Usman back on April 22. Brian Petrie, who do you have?
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot about Junior Tafa. I loaded up on him blindly. Kickboxer, Mo Usman, has been hurt before, has been knocked out before. And I was like, well, what? I should have done tape study. He did not look good against Mo Usman. He had chances to win and he rushed everything. He has no takedown offense. yet. He's obviously young, working on it. Looks exactly like his brother, by the way, which is uncanny. And Parker Porter doesn't go from as many takedowns as I'd like. He beat Braxton Smith, who was on, allegedly, I saw some articles. I think he is suspended right now. He was on a lot of that grandpa's cough medicine, you know what I mean? The illegal stuff. And he was jacked to the tits, and Parker Porter took him out. That's a one-round fighter who was ready to knock him out in one round. That's what Junior Tafa has here. He's a little slicker than Braxton Smith, obviously, but I think Parker Porter with those legs and just everything with his size, if he gets him down, it's over. I think that's Parker Porter, the steakhouse, is going to have to do. And I think he fillets. You see that right there? That's wordplay right there, babe. Oh. Junior Tafa at a dog money. I'm going to take it. Give me Parker Porter. I'm not good picking heavyweights, but I mean, plus money on a guy who did not look good. I'm going to take the steakhouse. Give it to me.
Bri, have you and Erica Petrie talked about the use of testosterone or human growth hormone in advance of your pro mixed martial arts debut?
So I got to get a physical every year. I have high T, so I don't know if I take testosterone, what would happen. My testosterone is high, which I did not think because I can't grow facial hair. I'm like, no, it's low. It's low. Yeah. No, the lady's like, no, it's borderline high. Like it might be a problem. I'm like, fuck. All right, well, that's out.
Do you want to do some EPO or blood doping for your cardio or no?
Yeah, I might have to look into it. My cardio is in shambles right now. I might have to look into it.
Maybe we'll do some EPO for your cardio or some steroids.
I'm totally down for it.
But if CFFC is not going to test you for EPO, then maybe we'll fucking do some blood doping before your debut. This is going to go off the rails quickly.
I love it.
Oh, my goodness. I didn't eat till like 4:30 in the morning. I did take a little bit of a nap today.
That's good.
That's interesting. All right. Ken Flo, Junior Tafa, Parker Porter House. Which way you go?
Little EPO, little meth for cardio. Yeah. We're the coaches you need, Brian.
That's right.
We got you, dog.
Right way. I love it.
Sponsored by the Anik Florian Podcast. I love it, dude. Listen, I'm with Brian here. Listen, when I see two guys that are capable of either knocking the other one out or it's a little too close, I'm always going to lean towards the underdog. And Brian's right, man. If Porter's able to take this fight to the ground, which I think he has, he can take people down. He can get on top. He has decent ground, certainly better than Tafa here. He likes to get people up against the cage. When he does have a grappling heavy game plan, he gets him up against the cage. He looks for those singles and doubles, gets on top, has good ground and pound, can get good position. I think that's what he needs to do here. Tafa's got some power too, no question about it. But I think at this stage of the game, he lacks that experience in making good game time decisions. So he could win this fight, but I'm going to lean towards Porter here as well.
All right, next up, high stakes in the women's flyweight division. Erin Blanchfield minus 148, Tyler Santos plus 124. Blanchfield, the American, will not be 25 until May. Wow. 11-1. Win over Jessica Andrade in what was a main event back in February. She's 5-0 in the UFC, Bri, and now draws the former world title challenger, Tyler Santos. The Brazilian has not fought since she challenged Valentina Shevchenko in Singapore last June. Who do you have here? Big fight.
Yeah. So we, a lot of times we'll label, like we label Bo Nickel him. He's him, right? I think Erin Blanchfield's her. I think she's her. I think she is that good. I'm ready for her to slip up at 24 years old, but she's so committed to this game. I follow on Instagram and literally she's I'm getting a crush on her. Not physically, but just the way she trains, and physically because she's pretty, but I'm just saying.
I dropped your wife's name and 2 minutes later, I know you guys sometimes sit down and watch the show.
So when do you have a crush on Bo Nickel?
My wife, if you go to Joe Burrow's Instagram, every fucking picture of Burrow is liked by my wife. So I'm okay with that. She's going to be okay with this.
All right.
I think she's fantastic. She's great. I mean, the Andrade fight, she stood up with Andrade and she got to the ground. And if you look at Erin Blanchfield's last couple fights, one takedown, because that's all it fucking takes. I think Tyler Santos is very good. She looked great against Shevchenko. Very close fight. She landed her own takedown. She's big. She's strong in there. But again, I'm ready for it to go off the rails in this low number at Erin Blanchfield, which I would pay twice the number on this. I'm loving it. The only reason I'm not going unit heavy, the only reason I'm not putting the nuts on the table right now is I like a bet later in the card, but I love Erin Blanchfield in this spot. I think she's going to win. I think she could even finish. That'd be 4 finishes in a row. And then at that point, you just got to throw in there. I know she's young, but that's a title shot if she can finish Taila Santos, in my opinion. Give me Erin Blanchfield.
Kenny, with respect to Taila Santos, I thought Erin Blanchfield would be minus 250 as opposed to minus 150 or so. You got number 3 and number 4 at 125 pounds. We mentioned also both prominently featured on the UFC's pound for pound list. Huge eliminator at 125. We need your prediction.
You know, what you can't forget here is that Taila Santos is a very good fighter. I think that she's a very good striker, and I think she'll probably be the cleaner striker than Erin Blanchfield out there. Doesn't necessarily mean she's going to win, but she has her weapons. She has her tools, and they are relatively sharp. She's also not too shabby on the ground either when she's able to take the back, get position. She's very good at taking the back. Is she as good as Blanchfield on the ground? No. I think Blanchfield positionally is going to be superior, and it's probably where this fight ends up. And because of that, I think Blanchfield is going to be able to outposition Taila Santos, just wear her down over time, and then ultimately either get a TKO or get some kind of submission. Now, this is the fight. This is a perfect fight that Erin should take after that excellent win over someone like Andrade. You know, she was calling for Shevchenko. I said It was too early. This is the right fight at this point in her career, with her experience, with her age. I love it. This is the path towards that championship opportunity. And I don't think it's an easy fight at all. But I do like Blanchfield here. I think if she can connect her striking in with her entries, get there safely, I think she wins this fight.
Nicely done, kid. Nicely done. All right, next up, big fight at featherweight. 9th ranked Giga Chikadze, minus 238. Taking on number 15, Alex Caceres, who is plus 195. Giga was to face Sadiq Youssef last September. He was forced to withdraw due to injury. Supposedly, he's had a hard time, has Giga, getting a fight since that Sadiq Youssef fight fell off. So here we are nearly a year later, Bry, and he draws Caceres, who's been on an absolute tear, winning 7 of 8 to reach the top 15. Who do you have here?
Yeah, I mean, Bruce Leroy's Alex Caceres has been around forever. He's a good striker. He's hard to put away. The guys that have put him away usually generally on the ground, but I think Giga is just on a different level. I'm a fan of this guy. I was saying earlier this week, he got dog walked by Kattar, which he kind of did. He got fucked up by Kattar. But I want to watch the fight. He landed 118 strikes on Kattar. It wasn't like he gave up and rolled over. Kattar definitely won the fight and dropped him a few times. But Giga landed strikes. This guy's an elite kickboxer, elite striker. That Giga kick to your liver is brutal. And I think, with Caceres, I think this is a perfect matchup. This is exactly who he should have came back from with a year off or longer than that after the beating he took from Kattar, rest the brain, rest everything. Caceres might want to mix up some takedowns, but I don't love his takedowns. He kind of clinches, wants to put you against the cage and kind of body lock, take you down. Giga has worked on that. That's primarily his thing. Early in his career, you could take him down. He has since has rectified that, but his striking, I think, is just beautiful with his hands and his kicks. More so with his kicks, but I think his hands are working. The time off, I'm not afraid of. Minus 245, I'm not afraid of. So give me Giga here. I like him big as well. I feel like I'm seeing it just so goddamn good this week. Clip that when I go over, but I'm just saying I like Giga here, and I think he maybe even get a finish here. I think he's back.
All right, fear is not a factor for Brian Petrie. Alex Caceres on the other side, Ken Flo. He's won 2 in a row, defeated Daniel Pineda back on June 3rd. He's fought like 28 times in the UFC.
Crazy.
What do you think about this one at 145 pounds, kid?
Yeah, I think this is a perfect fight for Giga, as Brian alluded to. I think Caceres has shown great improvements. I think mentally, spiritually, technically, he's looking phenomenal on a 2-fight win streak right now over 2, decently tough guys. And it's great to see that at this point of his career, but this is a really tough matchup for him in Giga. I just don't think he's going to be able to take him down. At this stage of the game. I think Giga has improved significantly in that modality. And I think that Giga's kick to the ribs are just an absolute problem. It's coming, but it's very difficult to stop. It's very unusual in that he's not attacking you with the shin to the rib. He's attacking you by digging those damn toes into your ribs. And he's going to touch an organ, and it's not going to be nice. So I like Giga here. And let's go with...
Ooh.
Give me 5 unis.
Whoa!
5-unit trigger by Kenny Florian on Geeks. $1,190 bet to yield 500. You guys get out of bedtime when we go prime time on a Sunday night? Or maybe you'd like doing bedtime. I don't know. So I'm getting out of bedtime right now.
Oh, really?
I am. Yeah, I'm out of bedtime.
Yeah. It's fine. It's absolutely fine. All right, co-main event. Kenflo, we're going to lead with you here. It's a light heavyweight rematch. Ryan Spann, -148. Anthony Lionheart-Smith, +124. So Smith took the first meeting. It was September of 2021. He did so by submission just 3 minutes and 47 seconds into the fight. Since he has lost 2 in a row to high-level competition, there's heat on this matchup as well. Kenny, very interesting fight. Relevant fight at 205 pounds. Spann or Smith for you, Kenflo?
Awesome. All right. Under normal circumstances, I would feel bad about not putting the kids to bed, but especially me being away. But I cooked dinner for the first time in my life, in my career, guys.
Whoa.
So we can put that in. Yeah, actually.
Tonight.
What did you cook? What did you make?
First time ever. I did a little cheeseburger, like taco thing. It was pretty basic, but it was delicious. It was simple, but the kids liked it. It was good. Clark was impressed. So anyways, for me, that's a big deal. All right. So let's see. Ryan Spann, Anthony Smith. Anthony Smith has probably, and hopefully Brian agrees, one of the most difficult guys to rely on, right? It's like, I love Anthony. He's a great analytical mind. He knows the sport very well. He's got some great skills, but on fight night, man, it is like throwing dice, unfortunately. And I think that, he could be really hot. He could be really cold. I have no idea what's going to happen. And I don't know where he's at this stage of his career. And I didn't love his last fight. To me, it seemed like he just didn't want to be out there. And I wonder if he wants to be out here against Ryan Spann. He better be. And if he is, hey, he could absolutely win this fight on the feet or on the ground. But Ryan Spann is an extremely dangerous guy on the feet and on the ground, more so on the feet. Positionally, he may suffer from some issues on the ground maybe, but he's still very dangerous. He's got some good submissions. He's got some good ground and pound, but boy, does his power worry me against someone like Anthony Smith. And also, Anthony hasn't quite solved the issue of calf kicks or leg kicks in general. And I think that's something that Ryan Spann was probably going to try to expose here, and then he'll try to look for one of those big power shots with his hands upstairs. And I worry about Anthony here in this one. I like Spann here. I think that I don't know. You have a hungry fighter against, and I'm not sure where he's at this point in his career fighter. So I'll leave it at that.
Fair enough. Absolutely fair. Anthony Smith, and you're wise to point him out as an analytical mind. I think he has a bright future calling fights for the UFC as well. One of my favorite colleagues on this crazy UFC roadshow, and really has an appetite for learning about television and not just sort of going up there and cashing a paycheck. So a lot of respect for the individual, but it is hard to quantify where his championship hunger might be at this stage of his career, and I think that's fair. Ryan Spann has won 2 of 3 since that main event against Anthony Smith. He was submitted, though, Bryce, last time out against Nikita Krylov on March 11th. Who do you have here, my brother?
Yeah, so this is obviously, Kenny alluded to, it's such a hard fight. I even put Spann in that category as a hard guy to predict. I mean, he had Johnny Walker on the ropes, and it's like, what are you doing? Nikita Krylov, he falls into it, and this is what I call on my podcast a bowl of spaghetti fight. You put 2 pitchers on the wall, you throw a bowl of spaghetti, whatever the spaghetti lands on more. That's who you pick. So I almost want to pass in this fight, but the fight has a little bit of heat. And I think that's going to motivate Anthony Smith. I think he kind of was ghost walking against Johnny Walker, who's a big, huge guy. I get it. But that's a fight that he possibly could have won. Johnny Walker looked fantastic. But I think Anthony Smith at dog money here. I think if it goes to the ground, I think he can submit Spann. I think Spann's fight IQ is lacking. I think his athletic abilities off the charts, power off the charts. But after round 1, midway through round 1, if he's not going the way he wants it to go, what happens? I think he might check out mentally and fall into something. I do think Anthony Smith has good submission, so I think Smith is going to get a submission. That's how I play this fight. I'm going to pick Anthony Smith. Personally, though, for the listeners out there, I play Smith by decision. If not, just kind of stay away from the fight. But yeah, that's my take.
All right, so Big Gun Brian PETRIE teased like a big bet of some kind. So we'll see if that happens before we get out of here. Do you have any prelim I'm
going to yield my time. Right. I want to say something about the Ray Longo team. I know you guys covered it. It's just a real quick thing. I'm going to yield my prelim time to say something about them.
All right. Well, before we get to the main event, give me the Longo stuff.
All right. No, basically what it is, you know, I'm getting close to Ray Longo. I've met Matt Fervola's dad. You know, I got Long Island blood. My mother's from Long Island. And you guys touched on everything about how respectful and great Aljo was after the fact. Again, I'm still baffled he gets booed. But what I love is the closeness of the team. Loyalty means so much to me. And the fact that you got Merab sitting there in the cage, all on the verge of tears, who's the number one contender, who could have made that situation, made that moment about him, going up to Sean, going, oh, you're calling out Cheetah? No, fuck that. You're going to get me. He didn't do that. He sat in the back and said, my teammate just lost. I'm devastated. Yeah. And that just is a testament to the loyalty to that team, to the coaching, everything like that. And there's not, I mean, listen, I've been in a few gyms. I'm not like I'm a fucking expert or anything, but there's a lot of shit that goes on in gyms that aren't like that, like what Ray Longo has in Long Island. And I respect it so much. So hats off to all those guys. That's all I want to say.
No, that's a very important point, and I'm glad you took the time to make it. It's interesting how you lean into those New York roots. It's like I'm trying to like hide the fact that my dad's from Seaford, New York. I was procreated in Massachusetts anyway. I don't think I have like New York blood.
What's funny is I've never been to Long Island, but I've been to Boston several times for Thanksgiving growing up because my grandmother has a twin sister. She married a guy from Boston, so we used to go there for Thanksgiving. So, you know, there we go. So
good choice by her marrying a fucking Boston guy.
Yeah.
Some people suggested that Bostonians are mean. I don't think collectively we're as mean as New Yorkers, but it's very cool for me to see how much my coworkers love the city of Boston. It's always heartwarming when people like the place that you're from. All right, main event, featherweight eliminator of sorts. Former champ Max Holloway, minus 850. Korean Zombie Chan Sung Jung, plus 520. Only man to beat Max Holloway since 2019, Alexander Volkanovski. Max has won 3 of 4, bested Arnold Allen over 5 rounds back in April in Kansas City. Bri, he's in a bit of a tough spot divisionally until Volk loses or leaves. Korean Zombie's last fight came against the Volk man. That was a losing effort April of 2022. Will you have a play for us on the main event?
Yeah, you know, sometimes fights hit me like lightning bolts. I've been tracking this fight for 2 weeks now, going, I mean, the number on Max Holloway should, in my opinion, should be minus like 2,000. I mean, I think no offense to Korean Zombie. I just think he's taken steps back as opposed to steps forward. He's very tough. He's always going to be in the fight. He's got power in his hands, but he hasn't evolved. He hasn't improved as a fighter, in my opinion, and he's just getting older. And Max Holloway, besides Volkanovski, is the best 145er. I mean, you can make an argument he's there. I mean, I thought he would go up to 55. I mean, I don't think you're going to get a 4 fight with Volk after how the last one. I thought you get a 55. He's got the long body for it. Staying at 45 here. He's going to Singapore to fight kind of, you know, I mean, the not really hometown guy, but fighting that part of the world guy in the main event here. And Max at 850, I'm doing something a capper should never do. I should walk away from this. I should say, no, you can't do that. I would pay double this price. I would put 100 units on this. I'm going to be putting a lot of money on my own money. This is a 5-unit play for me on Max Holloway. I think he's just steps ahead of Korean Zombie. I think Korean Zombie has a puncher's chance like everybody, but when's the last time we've seen Max get hit and knocked out? He's never been knocked down. So I don't see the path for victory on Korean Zombie here. Sure, he can grapple. He's got a twister submission himself. He has good jiu-jitsu, but I just don't see that happening. I think Max is on point, and I think he's taking fights now just to – because he knows he's not going to get the Volk fight unless Volk loses, and he's taking fights now just to prove his greatness and to get better as a mixed martial artist. And I think that's all the motivation a guy like him needs. So I'm heavy on Max here, big time. A 5-unit play, and I think he's going to get a finish as well. I feel like Max hasn't had a finish in a while, so I see where a finish as well coming.
4,250 American dollars for PETRIE on Max Holloway. Ken Flo, who do you have in the main event?
You know, these are two guys that are must-see TV. I think this is an awesome matchup. I know it's one that Max Holloway has wanted. I think a lot of 145-pounders want this matchup against Korean Zombie because of how much of a legend the Korean Zombie is. But also it's because he moves forward, doesn't care about moving his head, isn't one to kind of dance in and out. He plods forward and says, F you, basically. Let's see who's tougher. And it's what makes him so dangerous, but it's also what makes him so vulnerable. And, you know, am I supposed to bet against the volume king from Hawaii and Max Holloway against someone like Korean Zombie? You just can't do it. And, you know, big favorite here at minus 850, but he's a big favorite for a reason. It could have been even bigger, in my opinion, just based on Holloway and his style. I think what I'm most intrigued by is this a Max Holloway that has peaked? Has he peaked a few fights ago? Is he still improving? Are we going to see some new tools in his toolbox? I don't know. I'm willing to be surprised, and I'm looking forward to this fight. Holloway, one of the biggest legends, one of my favorite fighters to watch. So this should be fun.
For sure.
All right, if you want more from Brian PETRIE at Brian PETRIE MMA, Big Gun, appreciate the extended time, my man, and we will talk to you in about a week as we look forward to Paris, brother.
Awesome. I'll see you, boys.
All right, there he is, Brian PETRIE, with us most every week here on the Anik Florian Podcast, and that is going to do it for today. Coming up next week, former two-time UFC bantamweight champion Dominic Cruz, also Roman Bravo Young, Penn State wrestler. We'll have the two of them together coming up next week. We'll get you ready for UFC Fight Night. Ciryl Gane versus Sergey Spivak coming up September 2nd in Paris, France. Thanks to our guests. Thanks to Ray Longo just for everything that he does for this program. Thanks to Brian PETRIE. Thanks to all the listeners out there for your commitment to this show every week. Thanks to everybody on the ground in Boston who shouted out the podcast. If you do want to support the show, we appreciate you going to the DraftKings YouTube channel, subscribing, liking our show. And when you do like our show, our videos will populate there. The clips are still yours on the Anik Florian Podcast YouTube channel. Bilal Muhammad, Jason Anik going live every Thursday with Remember the Show, so you can tune in for that as well. And you can go to worldmmaawards.com if you do want to support us in the MMA programming categories. We try to take home our first award for the Anik Florian Podcast. If you want to catch me on SportsCenter tomorrow, I'll be talking about Sugar Daddy, the Sugar Show, Sean O'Malley, and Ken Flo. I wish you all the best in your endeavors. Are you on the road this week or no?
I am. I'm off tomorrow.
You got a big one, don't you?
That's in New York City. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Shane Burgos, Clay Collard in the main event, kid.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Two of my favorites.
Yeah.
Clay Collard. Oh, I love Clay Collard. I love Shane Burgos. You know who else I love?
OAM.
You know who else I love?
What do you got?
Renan Fajeda.
Dude. It's
Bro.
insane.
So if you don't know,
dude do a backflip off of one leg and stick it on one leg. You ever see that? A 6'8" dude? It's crazy.
Crazy. So if you don't know, part of the reason Ken Flo was not with us for UFC 292 in Boston is because he was at the theater at Madison Square Garden on Friday night for the PFL as Renan Fajeda crochets Maurice Green in the main event. That was pretty violent. And then Larissa Pacheco, my goodness, 14 seconds. She's a bad bitch, huh?
Dude, she's a problem. She's a problem. And I have a feeling that every organization of the world is going to be trying to get her services because she goes out there to decimate her opponent. Doesn't last long. She might be the one to take the throne of someone like an Amanda Nunes. But as you said, Zhang Weili and her, it's like they're right there, man, as far as best of the best, in my opinion. Yeah. All
right. Follow Ken Flo's business at Argus Integrated Defense on social media. I mean, if you come up on Larissa Pacheco, the space management they teach is not going to help. But for maybe some other street fights, you'll be okay. Thanks to our executive producer, Cody Merrill. Thanks to everybody at DraftKings for the VIP stuff and the dinner in Boston. I got to meet, by the way, some of their high roller gamblers, like these sharp MMA minds that make like hundreds of thousands of dollars, I guess, betting on MMA. And yeah, they were picking my brain, but I was more picking theirs. Wow. It was a pretty cool experience. All right. Thanks, everybody in Boston, for the support. We appreciate every last one of you, and we are back in a week to recap Singapore and look ahead to Paris, and, of course, pay-per-view in Australia, Cannonball coming as well. Thank you all for supporting the show. For Ken Flo, I'm John Anik. We'll talk to you until next week. Until then, you'll live.
Every time I start a verse, I break at least 3 commandments. Kinda like Pluto, because I never planned it. I'm outlandish in a way that make Apaches look like they own ranches. It's the art of war. Your blood's the only color on the canvas. And I don't mean it like a thug sense of how you can get got. Fuck being gangsta, I'm hip-hop. You got it? Every time you walk in the label, the A&R's like nodded. Immune to your shit, cause I circle, dotted. Body heat is a toxic leak. Got a beat, I don't got it. Street cop and see, start to think psychic lick. Make the speakers speak elitistly. Off their high horse, make an ass of their views. Your DJ must not know the alphabet, forgetting his cues. My favorite DJ got those and 6 extra L's to abuse. Esoteric John P, and I'm the new kid school. I'm Raider Ellis, nice to meet you. Short busting my styles. Egocentric, ego tripping with frequent fly smiles.
DJ wants to get at the bird. He gets at the bird. And Bird takes the shot.